Okay, movie 2. Where I left you was at the bottom of page 3, and what I would like to do is continue on to page 4. When you need to, and after you have set a keyframe and you have changed that keyframe to an easy in, easy out, or easy ease, and you want to change back the keyframe, the next keyframe, just command click on it and you can change the interpolation of a keyframe. But the next thing is to actually now add the animation to the buildings. So the next page actually now sets all of these keys starting at 03 going down to 2427 for the left one, and then doing the same thing from 021 and going down to 2427 and setting them. So I'm not going to do this on screen with you. It would take too much time, but stop the movie and go ahead and set all of these keyframes exactly the way that I ask you to do for the left one, knowing that you've already parented them. All the other buildings are parented to left or they're parented to right. So now let's go ahead and do all of the keyframes and set them all. And don't forget to go to Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease and Easy Out. And when it asks you to command click on a new keyframe to change it back to normal interpolation, just go ahead and do so. Before you go there, I am going to go show you what that would look like though. Here is the left one with all the keyframes added. Here is the right one with all the keyframes added. And this is what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to pop up from the bottom when you're finished, like that. Watch this. And now they're supposed to nicely move apart and give you the illusion that the camera is moving from one side of the frame to the other. So go ahead and set those keyframes and then come back to this movie, okay? All right, now that you're back to this movie, go ahead and ram it and get the feeling that this is how it's supposed to look. Now, the very next step after you're finished with that wants you, let me back out of this, wants you to go make a ship comp. And in the ship comp, make sure that you switch it back to 640 by 480 and that you have 25 seconds in duration. Then we are going to go to the next page, which is going to ask you to bring in all of the files. I've added a video folder and brought in the three movies that I have shown you, or I'm about to show you. So let me squish this down and let's click to the ship comp. Now obviously the ship comp here has nothing on it. I've already added everything and I shied everything. See how I've shied everything? That means to hide or show. That's the shy button right there if I haven't shown you in class already. But when you bring in a sequence, there's only a couple of things I want to show you. When you bring in the PSD files, just bring them in as normal footage. Now go get them, and then let's go get the sequences. Now when you go get a sequence, make sure you click on each sequence and you take the sequence, and you, in order to have this show up as sequence, you're going to have to single click on the first file, then make sure it's either TIFF or Targa or IF or JPEG, and make sure that you do not force alphabetical order. Now I'm going to cancel that and I'm going to show you what the icon looks like correctly when brought in. Look at how that looks like a nice sequence icon, okay? So bring in all of the asset folders, the audio files, all 5 of them or 6 of them or 7 of them, and the sequences, as I said, and then I made a skies folder. You can make a Photoshop or a skies folder for the plain backgrounds, and then I made a video folder for the 3 videos that are going to be detailed at the end of this. So you can wait to make that one if you want to. The very first thing it asks you to do when this comes in, let me back off on this so I can quickly advance this, is it wants you to bring in the burst one. And I just want you to know that you have to time stretch it to 75% and then add the following keyframes: 2 for scale, 4 for opacity. So go ahead and let's go. What you can watch me more or less bring it in. Now I'm going to unshy it. I'm going to then unshy the Yemen sequence. Here, let me unshy it, and then let me reshy so that it looks like that's all I have in there, okay? Now that one was at the bottom of the first page. I should have said that, the bottom of the previous page. So before you bring in the burst one, you have to bring in the Yemen ship and then set 4 opacity keyframes. go ahead and bring it in at 113. Now that means, let me go back to the After Effects thing, that you are bringing it in so the in point comes in at 113. I'll hit T for opacity, and now would you please set the 4 opacity keyframes that are at the bottom of this page. Go ahead and do that. The next step is going to be bringing in the burst. Now the burst has to be time stretched. Set its position, then set the 2 keyframes for scale, then set the 4 keyframes for opacity. This is what you get. I'll come back to the color correction one. So let's go in here. Now I'm going to unshy mine. I'm going to unshy and show the burst. Now let's go in, live update. I didn't mean to turn off live update. There we go. Whoops, I have to actually click OK. Didn't mean to do that. And let's go in now to here. So the burst is, let me hit UU so it shows everything, and let me close the effect one for now. So I want you to change the position to what it said was 320 by 358. So let me go back to the Acrobat PDF. There is the position. Here are the 2 scales, and here are the 4 opacities. So let's go back to the After Effects one, and you can see mine. There are the 2 scales that I want you to set. There are the 4 opacities that I want you to set, and there's the regular position. So this is what it all looks like on screen. And remember, before I did that, I had set the time stretch to 75%. See that right there? Good. Now I'm going to close that so we don't need to see that. The next thing it asks you, so go ahead and set those. When you're ready, we're going to go do the effect, color correction, hue, and saturation, so we change the colors. So I'll go back to After Effects. I realize you probably feel like we're on a teeter-totter or a slide or whatever the heck you want to call it. So I'm going to click the burst and hit the E, and then I'm going to double click this so we can see that I have set it to -50, -95, and -25. So now it has a kind of a black and white muted feel. Now I'm going to leave the mode on overlay, but yours would be on normal at this point. Okay, now let's go back to the, you read your file. Go ahead and do the Storm Composite JPEG for the bottom. Set the 2 position keyframes. Set the scale for the Storm Composite JPEG. Then make a new solid. Name it Background Color Overlay. Make sure the RGB settings are the way you want. I'll show you that. Make the opacity 30%, and then go back and reset the mode for the Storm Composite JPEG and the burst to overlay. So let's go back to After Effects, and this is what I want you to do. Let me unshy those so I don't drive you nuts. We're going to go to the unshy this and show it. And then we're going to unshy the asteroid. Where is it? AIF, that's it. And then unshy that one, and then I'm ready to go. Now, everything that was done here was done on purpose. So I want you to bring in the Storm Composite JPEG and then set the position, and then set the 2 keyframes for position so it moves across the screen. Let me turn off the top 2 things so you can see how this Storm Composite JPEG, the clouds, moves across the screen. Now, what I did was I then made a solid. So I'll hit Shift Command Y and show you that the solid was set to RGB of, I said R is 46, G is 112, and B is 128. So go ahead and set that, and then name it Background Color Overlay, so it's the right size and color. That one goes to the bottom at the home key, so you should have these 4 files when you're ready to go. You should have Background Color Overlay. You should have the Storm Composite JPEG, which you reset the mode to overlay. You should have the burst, which has been time stretched, with a overlay, again, the mode to overlay, and then leave the Yemen ship as a normal mode. And now this is what you have. Okay, that's what you have right there. So, oops, it would help if I actually did this. Now let's hit the RAM so you can see the RAM on this. If it goes fast or if it goes too slow, I'll speed this up. So the ship comes at you. It's all got this nice like tint of cyan, so it matches the sky, and then the ship is going to fade out at the end because you set all the right keyframes, okay? So what I need you to do is to, I might have made a mistake here. In the handout, if there wasn't an opacity keyframe to the background color overlay, we better do an opacity keyframe. At least I'm going to, so it doesn't look good. So I'm going to go to this and set an opacity keyframe here, and then I'm going to set an opacity keyframe so it melts right into when the other stuff starts to show. You know what? I don't think the storm... I never set the opacity keyframe. When you come back on this, I'm going to just go ahead and tell you I should have set the opacity keyframes. Let me go to the... I didn't do all my things I needed to do. So on the Storm Composite JPEG, I needed to set the opacity to come in. You know, I might do that later, actually, when I actually set the opacities on it, so I may not have actually worried about doing that. So this is just going to look like it just pops in, but later on I'll set a nice opacity so it fades in at this point right here. I probably am not going to set any opacities, all right, because I'm going to actually set it later when I actually set the one opacity to the ship comp. So I don't care if this pops in, and I don't care if it just kind of maneuvers out. We're going to set opacities on that later. But the next thing when we come back for the next movie is going to be the audio on it. Now I'm going to unshy it and show you the 4 layers that I've added for audio, but let's not worry about the audio. Let me shy it back. When you are ready to do the audio, go to the next movie.